From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. And coming up today, K-State's Dan O'Brien will share the brand new analysis out of K-State of the expected returns to grain production in 2018 and whether those are likely to cover production costs. That during Dan's weekly visit about the grain market trends. Then we've for you the final segment of the week featuring County Extension agricultural agents from around Kansas who've been attending the 2017 K-State Research and Extension Annual Conference. Today, Pratt County agent Mark Ploger will, among other things, reflect on the changing role of Extension agricultural agents as he's about to retire after 26 years of service. And later, on Kansas agricultural weather, K-State's Mary Knapp. Here on Agriculture Today.
Science Communication Week is coming to Manhattan November 6th through 11th. Kansas State University, Sunset Zoo, and Flint Hills Discovery Center are bringing together local science students, professors, and professionals, as well as journalists from National Public Radio and National Geographic to share their insights and discoveries. Find out about all the free public events at k-state.edu/SciComm. That's k-state.edu/SCICOMM.
As part of our overview of the grain markets this week, we'll find out what Dan O'Brien has calculated in the way of returns to crop production as we head out of this cropping season and look ahead to 2018. Dan, as you know, is a grain market economist with K-State Research and Extension. Before we get to your new analysis of those break-evens, Dan, and what producers might think about there as they plan ahead, the market this past week, again, these cash trades have been slogging along, and that is the storyline once again, by and large, isn't it?
Yes, when you look at the charts over the last month or so, literally in some cases, on a week-to-week basis, you can write the same price in. About, $3.60 corn and soybeans at 9-something and wheat futures prices not that far unchanged, but of course the wide basis levels come into play. So we've been moving sideways with some variability around the average. There is the upcoming November 9th USDA WASDE report, and I think it's worthwhile thinking where the risks are in that. And here we're several days ahead of that. It'll be out next Thursday. It would seem that the USDA's corn production number, if it would go higher, could bring some downward pressure onto the feed grain side of things. For us, cash corn, cash grain sorghum. Again, consistent with what we've been saying, the demand and usage for feed grains is now and has been projected to be pretty good overall, particularly our domestic use numbers. So I think that's a positive. On the wheat side, we've just been struggling on the export side of things. It is interesting. At the time of our struggle, you have news in the market about Russian exports being so brisk that people within their country are worried that they're going to oversell their exports, undersupply their ability to meet their domestic processing milling needs. So until that Russian market clears itself out, Russia, Ukraine, other markets like that, and becomes not as readily available, not quite so abundant, we'll probably struggle from a U.S. point of view to be competitive often to those Middle Eastern markets, Egypt, Morocco, places like that. On the soybean side, we've kind of been up and down. If you stand back and take a gander at what movements are in that market, that's the one of these major sets of futures that's actually been trending up in recent times. And the market over the last 1 or 2 weeks has digested news about weather risk in South America, Brazil in particular. And again, it's not that we're going on a straight beeline higher, but we have trended to the high side. Mm-hmm. And when you look at where the soybean market and the corn market and the wheat market and grain sorghum, where they're going right now, again, we're looking at cash prices that, in spite of these trends we've just talked about, we're looking at cash prices that we hope cover full costs. And in that algebra, A plus B equals C, or in our case, total cost divided by bushels, we're looking for large bushel numbers to lower that per unit cost so that we can come in under the wire and actually cover our costs.
Let's just launch right into those numbers that you put together. The probability of covering those costs as we look at the likely price trends ahead here. And you've gone to some exhaustive effort to come up with this, Dan. How did you calculate this, first of all? That would be worth knowing.
Well, we've just released our 2018 KSU Farm Management Guide budgets for dryland and irrigated crops. And this is step one of these budgets, where these numbers represent the middle yield ranges. Now, in about a month and a half, if not sooner, we plan to also release high and low yield scenarios around that. But at least these are the first ones out the gate. And we've looked at our total costs with the idea that in the long run, you have to cover total costs. But what those total costs represent is just the cost of production for that enterprise. You would need a margin above that to start covering family living and other costs, other overhead costs beyond that. There is a kind of economic principle that holds true to life, that if you cover variable costs plus $1, you can live to fight another day. Right. If you can't cover variable costs for producing one of these crop enterprises, then you shouldn't put the seed in the ground. Because, again, in the short run, if you cover variable costs, you can survive and then put off the covering of these fixed costs for the long run. But you can't put the fixed costs off forever, because
it'll come home to roost eventually.
When you're replacing machinery, when you have family living, you're just borrowing money. But at least in tough times, you can cover variable costs and keep moving on. So you look at, for instance, for corn, we have, of course, a number of dryland corn enterprises all over the state of Kansas and irrigated in about the western half of the state. It looks like with yields of about, say, north central Kansas, 120 bushel an acre, northeast Kansas, 145 bushels per acre on average that we'd planned for, southeast 120, even southwest at 82. You're basically at the place where we cover, with the forward bids that are out there, pull this off of DTN for these different regions. With the forward bids that are out there, we cover 100% of the total costs, but not by much. We're at 100, 104, 105. It's amazing how the market is doing that, giving us prices that just at decent yields just cover costs. So we are covering that, but there's no margin or minimal margin left for family living. Right. So that's the type of thing that drives people to pull in off farm income, and if they can't do that, basically we're looking for other income sources. Our farm income, delaying machinery purchases, whatever. On the irrigated side, if we're looking at yields of 225, north central 240, northwest 240, we're basically at about the same situation. Down a little bit in northwest, even at 240 bushel an acre. We've got a budget for 260. We probably are covering total costs on that. But even with irrigated corn, all that money we're laying out there, $800 to $900 per acre for total costs. Still, we've got to have 250, 260 bushel per acre to make that thing go.
That's walking a fine line, isn't it?
Yeah. So we're really pushed out there to economic stress and extremes. And I'm not talking about the human aspect of it, because that's sure there. We're on the edge of producing enough bushels to lower the cost to basically have our forward contract bids, which are conservative, of course, have a chance to cover full costs.
And once again, we might note, as folks have picked up, you have broken this down region by region, so It's a very helpful analysis. What do the numbers say about grain sorghum?
Grain sorghum yields of 115, 120, 135 bushel per acre give us a good chance to cover full costs, particularly in northeast, north central, south central Kansas. Northwest, at 85 bushel per acre dry land, we'd be low. A lot of people are getting much higher than that, I think, particularly this year out there, 100, 110 or something. We'd be covering full costs there if we had that projecting out into next year as well. So name of the game on grain sorghum is to have 100 bushel plus, I think. Now, we have looked at our grain sorghum irrigated budgets and plugged in for irrigated grain sorghum western Kansas, say 160 bushel per acre. We come close at a 321 forward bid to covering that. Basically, to cover full economic costs, we need about 390 or so. That's not too dissimilar to corn. Corn 360, 364. So, again, the challenge with the corn versus grain sorghum issue is to make sure that if we are producing grain sorghum, that we're serious about it, put good irrigation water on it, and really do shoot for 160, 170, 180 bushel per acre to make sure that our cost per unit is down to the place where we're on a par with corn.
One would suspect that the soybean break-even numbers would look a bit more favorable, though.
Yeah, even for dryland soybeans in the 35 to 45 bushel per acre yield region, at the prices that are out there, again, forward bids $8.95, $9.35, $9.24, north central, northeast, southeast, $9.14 at south central, and those are the dryland bids. We're more than covering the total cost numbers. Now, not by 80, 90%. It's more like 14, 22, 10, 11% above total cost. So if we calculate these numbers, Kansas farmers will be doing all that much more all winter long and figuring out what their profitability numbers are. And they'll be lining up these same crop comparisons, et cetera. The only thing I would say is that if you see numbers like this, and we're sitting here in early November 2017, you would sure wonder about being wary of a lot of other people seeing the same numbers, slugging a bunch of soybean acres in, and then changing what we ultimately end up with. So that these basically 9 to 9.35 forward bids could go away if a lot of people respond plant a whole bunch of soybean acres.
And then there's wheat. And sadly, that's where the real pinch shows up.
We're about $1.25 low on our forward bids. Now, of course, those are the forward bids, and we have a lot of crop production risk to deal with, et cetera. We do cover on all these bids the variable costs, and most of them fairly handily. But our forward bids that are running in the range of, $3.57 to $3.97, again, are, like I say, $1, $1.25, $1.50 below our full cost numbers. Now, and our full cost numbers are based on reasonable average long-run yield estimates. And, so you're running 45 to 52 bushels per acre on a lot of these. If we get 60, 65, 70, then you change that to lower those costs. Still, we have the weather risk to deal with, so it makes it a bit of a risky enterprise.
Well, it's illustrative as to what producers might reasonably expect in regard to the returns to their crop production in 2018. And take a look at that at agmanager.info as it's posted the early part of next week. Dan, good work, and appreciate your time. We'll talk next week.
Thanks, Eric.
Research and Extension grain market economist, K-State, based in Northwest Kansas, Dan O'Brien. You're listening to Agriculture Today.
Did you eat today? Thank a farmer. A way to get more involved in agriculture is through 4-H and FFA. Through 4-H and FFA, we have been given multiple opportunities to grow as leaders and learn more about agriculture.
You can learn skills related to jobs, public speaking skills, and you get the opportunity to travel around the country and meet new people.
If you want more information about getting more involved in 4-H and FFA, visit them on their websites at kansasffa.org and kansas4h.org.
We're back now on This Agriculture Today. The 2017 Annual Research and Extension Conference at K-State is coming to a close today. As we've been telling you all week, county and district extension agricultural agents from all around Kansas have been taking part in those activities throughout the week, and we have been catching a few of those folks to come over and visit with us about the year in review in their counties agriculturally. And we've one more individual to visit with this week. He is the longtime Pratt County Extension Agricultural Agent, Mark Ploger. And Mark, agriculture in Pratt County, it really is the classic mix of crop and livestock production, isn't it?
That's correct, Eric. Yeah, we have quite a mix there. We do have all kinds of crops. We do have the feedlot and sale barn there in Pratt County, so we do have quite a mix there.
So you look back on this past year, and staying on the crops side, was it a relatively decent year, production-wise, that is?
Well, production-wise, it was pretty good. We did have some trials and tribulations along the way. As you can tell by Mary Knapp's Weather Data Library drought map, we were in that drought section for quite a period of the time during the year, and we're still in the most concentrated part right now. We did have some moisture that did come through, and we did get some sporadic rains and so forth, and it helped us out with our crops. Not all the county really got to take benefit of that, but most parts did. We have a wide variety mixture of crops this year. Our cotton has really turned out real well. We went from an 8,000 acre production last year to almost 30,000 this year. Of course, that crop is yet to be stripped, but it really looks pretty good.
What's been the impetus in that acreage shift toward cotton then?
I think the economy, the farm economy, probably is the biggest part of that. You know, people are looking at alternatives now. We've got some new management out at the gin, and they're really doing some good work out there. They've got some progressive people, and they're trying to get the farmers and producers in line with that then too.
So as you've watched cotton evolve as a cash crop in Pratt County, it has become a favorable element in one's rotation then?
I think so. I think this has been a great step for us, and it's going to help out a lot, I think.
The fall crops otherwise, and the numbers may still be coming in, but what's your sense of the corn, the soybean, the sorghum harvest?
Well, we got delayed a little bit. I know we've gone through some weather trials and so forth. We had some pretty good rain there at the start of September, end of August. Then it dried off for a while, and people got a chance to, work their ground and get the wheat ready to go, and they were just waiting for the crops to mature. But then we went through a period then that we just didn't get any moisture. Mm-hmm. Some of the crops didn't dry down for some reason. We think it's a varietal thing, maybe on the corn. But we're making progress, and we've gotten most of the crop out now. So we're just waiting on some milo to dry down and then a little bit of corn to dry down yet. And we've got piles of grain laying on the ground and being covered up. So
need to move some grain.
We do. We really do.
Yeah. And Pratt County has featured wheat as a staple for a long, long while. Producers, once again, are they committing to wheat like they once did, or are they paring back?
Well, we did go back just a little bit, but we still have a good acreage in Pratt County. Of course, we're fighting that wheat streak mosaic quite a bit. Everybody did exactly what they were supposed to do. They got a good kill on that, but then when we got the flush of rains there in the first part of October, here came the volunteer back again. And they were scrambling around trying to get that killed out before they planted the next crop because they know what that wheat streak mosaic virus will do.
Mm-hmm. So the battle continues there.
Oh, yes. Yeah. But I'd say we're probably 90 to 95% finished on the wheat planting now. So,
yeah. And now rain would be in order.
It would be very nice.
That livestock side, briefly here, what's been happening in cattle production and otherwise in Pratt County?
Well, we're holding our numbers pretty good. Our cow numbers are right up there where they should be, and we're just following those cycles. Once you get into the livestock business, you need to stay with it. Don't try to jump in and out. And those people that stay with it for the long haul are doing pretty good.
And you have quite a few diversified operators.
Right.
Again, the standard crop and livestock mix then, and that helps ease the risk.
That's true. You've got to be fairly well diversified in this day and age.
So, Mark, how would you read the state of producers economically right now? Crop prices aren't great. Cattle prices are fairly firm and doing decently anyway. As folks head into the wintertime, what's the sense of it?
Well, they're cautiously optimistic. We've had some struggles, with the farm economy, as you well know. I think the ones that are in there right now are in it for the long haul. They're making good use out of our Farm Management Association. Mm-hmm. And watching those numbers pretty close. We did have a decrease in our family income and so forth, and our numbers were down this year in south central Kansas, but I think we can weather the storm. The tough ones are still out there.
And on that note, we might bring up that you in Pratt County will be hosting a special program. It's a series that the agricultural economists at K-State will be putting on this winter. It's called Farming for the Future, and producers can get into the economic issues at hand by participating in that.
That's correct, Eric. Yeah, we are hosting the first one in Pratt County on December 14th. We look for quite a number of people to be there. I think it's going to be well worth their time to attend. We're going to have a lot of knowledge presented that day. and also the course of the other 3 conferences that will take place across the state. I think it's going to be well worth the producers' time to come and listen to hear what our people have to say, and it will benefit them considerably.
And that's not just for Pratt Countyans. Anybody in the region is welcome to come in and take that in.
That's right. We're advertising this regionally, so we're going to try to get 10, 12 counties if we can to come in. And we've got the room for them. It will be held at our fair building, and we can fit about 400 people in there. So we're looking forward to at least trying to get that number anyway.
Yeah. Well, it'll be a worthwhile gathering at each of those 4, but one will take place, one of the Farming for the Future sessions, December the 14th in Pratt. So if you're in that region, take due note. And details can be found, by the way, on the agmanager.info website. Now, Mark, before we let you go, we want to acknowledge right here that, in fact, you will be retiring from Extension at the end of December after, some 26 years in the service?
That's correct. That's it seems like a long time when you talk about it, but it seemed rather short to me.
And you started in Edwards County and then eventually moved to Pratt.
That's correct. I had some good years in Edwards County. I've spent about half that tenure in Edwards County and then half in Pratt. So it's been a good experience for me. I've really enjoyed it. And Extension has good people, and it's nice to be around those type of people and share the education with the folks out in the areas.
And since you're in that position where you can reflect over many years' time on Extension and the role of the agricultural agent in extending that education to, in your case, agricultural producers, has that role changed over time?
Well, technology has really changed in the time from when I first started to now. It used to be that we only had one computer in the office, and that was usually the office professional, and we'd work off that computer. But now we've got information at a click of a button. It's really changed, and you can get out to people much better now than what we could way back when, and it's made quite a bit of difference. And I'm always amazed at how much it changes all the time. You know, I've heard a quote sometime along the way that back when I started, technology doubled about every 10 years. Then about halfway through my career, it was about every 5 years. Now it's about every 3 months technology doubles. So it's quite a change.
Well, the access to information is instantaneous these days, but that has not eliminated the value of the one-on-one personal interaction with agents to producers.
That's one thing that we do have going with K-State Research and Extension is that one-to-one contact with everybody. And everybody that I talk to just feels much better just talking to a person than looking at a box or a screen.
Right. And likely, even in retirement, you'll keep your hand in working and interacting with producers at some level in Pratt County.
Oh, I think so. I don't think I'll ever quit. You know, once a county agent, always a county agent. So, but I will step back. We do have a lot of bright young people coming in, and I'm just amazed at how they've progressed and coming in with lots of knowledge.
Mark, congratulations on a fine career and the best in retirement, although we will see you around. We appreciate you coming by and sharing your thoughts on Extension, on agriculture in your county this past year, and the best of luck.
It's always a pleasure, my friend.
That's Mark Ploger. And again, Mark is the longtime Extension agricultural agent in Pratt County. And he's been in town, as have the other agents from around the state, for the annual Research and Extension Conference here at Kansas State University this week. This is Agriculture Today. And after the break, today's agricultural news headlines for you and more here on the K-State Radio Network.
While many people know hunger is an issue in developing countries, it is also a problem in our own backyards. In 2010, 1 in 7 Kansans struggled to put adequate food on the table. 2 K-State Research and Extension programs are tackling this problem. The Family Nutrition Program and Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program reach thousands of Kansans in more than 70 counties. They learn how to eat healthy with a low budget. For more information about these programs, visit ksre.ksu.edu.
Broadcasting from the campus of Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here, and now to today's agricultural news headlines for you, courtesy in part of DTN. House Republicans released yesterday the long-awaited tax reform and tax cutting plan that lowers tax rates for corporations and families, but forces both businesses and families to give up or reduce some favorite long-standing tax breaks. This is a complete redesign of the tax code, according to Representative Kevin Brady of Texas, who is the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. Brady's committee is set to mark up and debate the plan in the committee starting this coming Monday. The bill would cut the corporate tax rate from 35% down to 20%, a foundation set early in the debate over tax reform. Businesses would get immediate expensing of capital costs, but business interest would be limited and other tax deductions and tax credits would go away. Now, for individuals and families, the bill cuts individual tax brackets from 7 to 4, those at 39.5%, 35%, 25%, and 12%. The standard deduction would be doubled, but limit state and local tax deductions, as well as other items on the Schedule A. Now, in a victory for farm groups who had pressed on the estate tax issue, the bill doubles the estate tax exemption to $11 million for individuals. That's up from $5.5 million. The estate tax is phased out entirely after 2023. The American Farm Bureau Federation applauded Congress for releasing the plan. President of the AFBF, Zippy Duvall, said that while the proposal includes expanded and immediate expensing, continuing the business interest deduction is important to so many farmers and ranchers. He says it also provides immediate relief from the estate tax, with a repeal to follow in subsequent years. He said they'll be studying the plan to ensure the new rate structure reduces the tax burden on farmers and ranchers and gives them the flexibility needed to reinvest in their businesses, as he put it. Now, countering the Farm Bureau's enthusiasm, the National Farmers Union stated the plan would increase burdens for family farmers and ranchers. The president of the Farmers Union, Roger Johnson, said he and his members adamantly oppose the, as he called them, overarching elements of this plan because they shift the nation's tax burden from the top earners in our country to the backs of American family farmers, ranchers, and the middle class. Johnson criticized the proposal to repeal the estate tax and the cuts for the corporations and the wealthy. Further, he says that Congress doesn't provide the offsets to avoid a $1.5 trillion increase to the national debt over 10 years. Now, a group of businesses created a coalition, that's called BUILD, to protect the interest expensing. The bill limits the business interest deduction to smaller businesses, and the deduction would be capped at 30% of adjusted gross taxable income. Carry forward of business interest would be disallowed. This BUILD group stated that limiting interest deductions amounts to a new tax on American job creators who borrow to invest and grow. The policy change would harm the global competitiveness of businesses across all sectors of the U.S. economy, including agriculture. The National Council of Farmer Cooperatives had warned last week that eliminating the deduction for domestic production activities would translate to $2 billion in lost tax breaks for farmers. Still, that deduction is eliminated in this bill. And the National Biodiesel Board stated its members are disappointed in the first draft of this legislation because it does not include an extension of biodiesel tax incentives. That board added it would work with Congress to craft a robust biodiesel tax incentive. Lastly, in an area that could become a sticking point for farmers with high property tax bills, this legislation limits the state and local tax deduction, capping those at $10,000. And Dow DuPont plans to sell its 30 million gallon per year capacity cellulosic ethanol plant in Iowa nearly 2 years after the company hosted a grand opening for it. This plant, still in the startup process, was expected to demand about 375,000 tons of corn stover from local farmers within a 30-mile radius. The plant was to create about 85 full-time jobs and more than 150 seasonal jobs. Time now for this week's Kansas Wheat Scoop, and standing by with that is Marcia Boswell. Marcia?
Applications for research projects that can enhance Kansas wheat producers' profitability are currently being accepted by the Kansas Wheat Commission, Kansas Wheat Alliance, and the Kansas Crop Improvement Association for the 2019 fiscal year. These organizations are committed to promoting innovation within the wheat industry by investing in promising research opportunities. Improving wheat producer productivity and profitability through wheat research is at the heart of the Kansas Wheat Commission's mission, and we are proud to partner with other organizations to make a more innovative wheat industry. Each year, Kansas Wheat provides nearly $2 million in funding for research projects, such as wheat breeding, wheat quality, disease screening, insect research, genotyping, and many others. According to Aaron Harries, Vice President of Research and Operations for the Kansas Wheat Commission, nearly 1/4 of the Commission's producer-funded budget is appropriated to wheat research. The applicants should consider 3 goals when submitting a proposal: selecting research initiatives that support the industry's ability to gain and sustain market share profitably both domestically and internationally, educating Kansas wheat producers about profitable technologies, and cooperating with the wheat supply chain in order to adopt and implement technologies and innovations that support the profitability of Kansas wheat farmers. Examples of projects funded through the Kansas Wheat Commission's 2-penny wheat assessment include new variety development, production, trait discovery and genetics, testing methods and procedures, value-added uses, and consumer preferences. New this year, projects are being sought in the areas of development in winter durum wheat varieties and ancient grains, economic impact of implementation of posted protein scales for wheat by Kansas grain handlers, the use of gene editing for improved wheat varieties, improved procedures for industrial baking that allow for lower protein wheat and or less added gluten in formulas, feed use guidelines for cattle, swine, poultry, and other animals, and economic feasibility of a wheat flour mill in western Kansas. This initial request is for preliminary 2-page letters of intent that are due by November 30th. These 2-page documents will be reviewed by the committee with invitations for full proposals announced by December 20th. Projects currently funded in fiscal year 2018 are not required to submit a letter of intent. Full proposals for new and continuing projects will be submitted through grants and contracts according to a deadline set by that office. Final award announcements will be made in April of 2018. The full call for proposals is available at kswheat.com/research. For Kansas Wheat, I'm Marcia Boswell.
Thanks, Marcia. And this is Agriculture Today. Legal and financial concerns surround the day-to-day management of the agricultural industry. Producers, ag creditors, and USDA agencies rely on Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services. If you've received an adverse decision from the USDA or have an ag credit concern, call today 800-321-3276 or visit us online. Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services, exploring options, generating solutions. For you now on Agriculture Today, Kansas Agricultural Weather in Review, our weekly stint with Mary Knapp, climatologist with K-State Research and Extension, and with the full summary on our weather for the month of October, Mary. And how would you characterize the moisture this past month?
Well, actually, everybody did fairly well for the month of October, the exception being Southwestern Division, which was a little bit below what they would normally be. But they averaged 1.21 inches, which is just 0.3 of an inch less than they would normally expect for October. And that comes on the heels of a very wet period prior to that. So they are still ahead for the year to date, and they're ahead for the growing season, and they're ahead for the fall, the September 1st to October 31st. So it's not really a big issue out in that area. There's still pockets of abnormally dry and moderate drought conditions in south central Kansas, particularly around the Edwards County area where they've missed out on some of the events, and so they're running a little bit behind on that and could use some more moisture. The Eastern Division fared much better in October than we had in September, so All of those divisions are above normal for October. They're still behind for the September to October timeframe due to that very dry September.
And northwest, north central Kansas doing okay?
Yes, they are all doing okay. When we look at the year-to-date, the Central Division is running about 96% of normal. The Northeast and East Central are running 88 and 94% of normal. So again, even in our driest areas, it's still not nearly so bad as it was last year. And again, a much more favorable pattern.
And temperatures for October fairly well along the norm?
About 1.5 degrees warmer than normal, but again, the eastern divisions pretty much carried that load of warmer temperatures. The western divisions were within 1 degree to 0.5 degree warmer than normal, and eastern divisions were 2+ degrees warmer than normal. And again, not by any means our warmest. In fact, most of the divisions fell right in the middle of their distribution for that temperature pattern. Mm-hmm. We had some fairly big roller coaster rides on the temperature scale. The warmest temperature was 94 degrees, and our coldest temperature was 11 degrees across the month. So again, big swings in those temperatures, which is not unusual in the fall season.
That's the way it rolls in Kansas, after all. We had, this past Tuesday, Halloween, snow in Kansas. Not unprecedented, though, we would remind folks.
Right. We've had some very major snowstorms in October. This year, the highest total reported so far was 1.4 inches in Wallace, and that was recorded on the 31st. Here in Manhattan, we had a trace with 1/100 of an inch of liquid out of it. So, again, enough to let you know that winter is just around the corner, but not enough to really create a lot of problems.
But outside of that event, the past several days, very little in the way of moisture.
Yeah, mostly. Now, we've had a lot of fog and some drizzle, particularly in the eastern half of the state, but not a lot of accumulating moisture on that. Most of it's been 1/100 of an inch or less. So, again, it's there, it's damp, it's dreary, but it's not really adding much to that soil profile.
And since we last visited, we can officially declare the growing season over because of those hard freezes, Mary.
Right. We saw temperatures down into the 20s all the way to southeastern Kansas. Coldest reading, 11 degrees. So, yes, it pretty much made an end to all of our fall crops. Now, of course, the winter wheat and canola are more tolerant of those cold temperatures, and our soil temperatures are still staying above freezing, so there's still some warmth right there near the surface to keep that growing. And it looks like the next couple of days we'll see a little bit warmer temperatures where our highs will be in the 50s and 60s and our lows in the 40s and 50s, which will be ideal for getting some growth on that winter wheat.
And as a matter of fact, it looks like the next couple of weeks may feature warmer temperatures than we are accustomed to.
Right. The 8 to 14 day as well as the 6 to 10 day both call for an increased chance of warmer than normal temperatures. That doesn't mean we're not going to have cold weather in that time period, but it means that the upside of the roller coaster is going to be a little bit higher than the downside.
And what are we expecting in the way of moisture this coming week? Maybe sporadic chances? What?
We've got a couple of chances this weekend going into Saturday morning. There's a chance. There's another chance early in the week, and it looks like a better chance towards the end of the week. If we look at the quantitative precip forecast that goes out through next Friday, it's calling for between 1/100 of an inch and maybe as much as 1/4 of an inch, but most of that's weighted towards the end of that period, not towards the beginning. So again, something might be coming out there, but it doesn't look to be particularly impressive.
Nothing overwhelming whatsoever, as a matter of fact.
No, not a very big impressive measure. Now, there are quite a few storm systems headed towards the Pacific Northwest, they're talking about a lot of snow in the Cascades, but that's following a more zonal pattern, and it's likely to go across Montana and the North Dakota region and not make its way into the Central Plains.
But you never know when one might break rank, so to speak.
Well, right, and what we'll really be watching is if a ridge builds out in the west and those systems slide down along the Cascades and the Sierras and kick out into the desert Southwest, which brings us some moisture in advance. Otherwise, when it comes across and comes down through the northern plains, it's usually a drier air mass. We get a big temperature swing, but not much in the way of moisture out of it.
Yeah. Appreciate it, Mary. Thank you for coming over, and we will catch up with you in a couple of weeks, as a matter of fact.
Thanks, Eric.
Mary Knapp with us, climatologist, K-State Research and Extension. And by the way, having said that, because Mary will be away next week, and in her stead will be her colleague from the Weather Data Library here at K-State, Chip Redmond. And Chip has volunteered to stand in and fill us in fully on the online weather information of great use to you producers on the Mesonet website that we refer to so often. So be tuned in for Chip and that overview next Friday right here. That is our time for today, and thanks to you for tuning in. Enjoy your weekend. Eric Atkinson here. This has been Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.